Hello and welcome to Beyond the Continent. Here are stories making the headlines. I am Adebola Adedugba. We begin the news at this hour with the latest development in the Middle East. Israel this morning launched its unexpected retaliatory strike against Iran. Israeli missiles hit at least one site in Iran as Iranian state media alerted citizens to explosions heard in the central part of the Islamic Republic. The attack comes after Iran rained down more than 300 drones and missiles towards the Jewish nation last Saturday. World powers had urged restraint on both sides, but this latest strike threatens to spiral out into a full-blown war. The latest surge in violence was sparked by airstrikes on the Iranian embassy compound in Damascus on April 1st that was blamed on Israel. Earlier, a U.S. official said Israel was unlikely to carry out a strike on Iran before the end of Passover, but acknowledged that the timing could change. The Jewish holiday begins Monday evening and runs through April 30th. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has refused to comment on reports of an attack by Israel on Iran, beyond saying Washington was not involved in any offensive operation. Speaking to journalists after a meeting with the G7 counterparts in Italy, Blinken declined to answer repeated questions about explosion in Iran and reports that Israel had carried out retaliatory strikes. Speaking to reporters earlier, G7 host, the Foreign Minister of Italy, Antonio Tajani, said Washington had been informed in advance of the strikes without giving details.
On the first question, the reports that you've seen, I'm not going to speak to that, except to say that the United States has not been involved in any offensive operations. What we're focused on, what the G7 is focused on, and again, it's reflected in our statement and in our conversation, is our work to de-escalate tensions, to de-escalate from any potential conflict.
And to unpack this, I'm joined by Bolu Michael-Biyi, foreign policy analyst. Good evening. Glad to have you join me.
Good evening. Nice to be here.
Now, given the recent escalation and history of mistrust between Israel and Iran, how likely is this to spiral into a full-blown war? What are the potential consequences for the region?
Well, the war is currently kind of cold. It's not, as you implied, it's not a full-blown war yet. And, there are high chances, there's a possibility that it can either escalate or we see a de-escalation. So when we see that there's more violence, it shows that there's a chance that things are becoming worse and escalating. So when we see that when there's an escalation, we see that there's going to be more displacement of civilians. It might also destabilize the world energy market, because we must not forget that Iran they have a lot of oil. They have all these resources, energy resources, and there's also the possibility that the war might be hijacked by terrorist groups or persons who just want to capitalize on the instability in the region.
Well, let's talk about the U.S. and their position. They have remained silent so far on this Israeli attack. What role do you think the U.S. is playing behind the scenes, and how can this affect the situation and also impact U.S.-Iran relations?
Well, the first question one might want to consider is why does the U.S. find a need to come out to say that they're not aware of this? It's because countries, and world powers, individuals, they do believe that the Israel does not take any step without U.S. knowledge, because they are fully committed to the security of Israel. So to me, it's like a case of the wicked running when no one is chasing, and they might just be coming out to avoid direct involvement in the conflict, knowing fully well that it might affect their relations with Iran. Negotiations such as the nuclear deal may stall. The U.S. is not a fan of Iran, so to speak. So I won't say that they might be taking diplomatic steps to ensure that there's no face-off between Israel and Iran. But there's a possibility that there's truth behind the fact that, they might be avoiding escalation of the conflict.
What role do you think the international community should play when it comes to de-escalating tension and also prevent further conflicts?
Well, everything boils down to dialogue. When it comes to the international community, it's all about diplomacy. So they can, there are countries that have the ears of Iran. There are countries that have the ears of Israel. They can step in as mediators, to facilitate this dialogue between Israel and Iran. Another thing is that international organizations like the United Nations, can create that platform where they can have that, that engagement. Maybe have a special summit, in which both of them can, both countries and their representatives, can, talk to each other and, try and solve this issue. Then we can have a special conference, to talk about the issues between Israel and Iran.
We've seen sanctions being meted out by the US and also UK to Iran. Do you think this would have any effect whatsoever on the position of Iran?
Well, I personally do not believe in sanctions, and being that over time countries develop what I call sanction tolerance. They find a way to adapt to it, and mitigate and or look elsewhere, maybe to say China or Russia, and by the time you know it, they become sufficient, and they're not feeling the impact of the sanctions. But looking at precedents, there's a chance that the sanctions may work because it would cripple the capacity of Iran to actually take any major step, in the conflict. At least for a short period of time, or on a temporary basis, pending the time they now look for other options in order to stabilize again. So it might work against Iran when they are cash strapped. They will not be able to fund maybe a proxy organization or a group that's maybe advancing their objectives.
Now, looking ahead, what are some of the key factors to watch out for in the coming days or weeks, perhaps, that might indicate a potential path towards de-escalation or probably further escalation?
Okay, everything starts with the rhetorics. I think that's the simplest and the easiest way to have, to know whether there's going to be an escalation or a de-escalation. Israel said they were going to retaliate, and they did. So if countries, if the two parties are, speaking tough, it should not be taken lightly in any way. Those are signs that things might escalate. I saw on X, formerly known as Twitter, when Iran was sending in drones and all. Some even thought it was the beginning of a war, a third world war. Because they spoke tough and they took action. Another way we can know if there's going to be an escalation is if there's no diplomatic engagement or there's no willingness to participate in negotiation. If we continue to see an increase in military activities, then those are signs that things are going to escalate. So conversely, in the absence of these things or more, then we can say that things are dwelling, that we're seeing a de-escalation. Right now, Iran is not, it's been passive. Israel has also been, fairly moderate in their response, which indicates that both countries might be open to de-escalating the conflict.
Thank you so much for your expertise on the news. Michael-Biyi, foreign policy analyst. Thank you once again.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
We head to Europe, where British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has unveiled planned welfare reforms to end Britain's sick note culture in an apparent pitch to keep conservatives in power. Sunak said the reforms were needed to tackle an unprecedented rise in economic inactivity and ensure benefits are better targeted, but they were immediately criticized by doctors and charities. Official statistics show the proportion of people not working in the UK due to chronic illnesses has soared this decade, with analysts warning it is putting pressure on the economy.
So, in the next Parliament, a Conservative government will significantly reform and control welfare. We don't just need to change the sick note, we need to change the sick note culture so that the default becomes what work you can do, not what you can't. Anyone who doesn't comply with the conditions set by their work coach, such as accepting an available job, will, after 12 months, have their claim closed and their benefits removed entirely. Because unemployment support should be a safety net, never a lifestyle choice. Now, of those who are economically inactive, fully half say they have depression or anxiety. And most worrying of all, the biggest proportional increase in economic inactivity due to long-term sickness came from young people, those in the prime of their life, just starting out.
French Prime Minister Gabriel Attal has announced measures to crack down on teenage violence in and around schools as the government seeks to reclaim ground on security from the far right 2 months ahead of European election. Attal revealed his plan hours before a man stabbed 2 young girls aged 7 and 11 outside their school in eastern France, further underlining concerns of security at educational establishments. Their wounds were not deemed serious, and France has in recent weeks been shaken by a series of attacks on school children by their peers.
Dans beaucoup d'endroits en France, des groupes plus ou moins organisés qui cherchent à faire ce qu'on appelle un entrisme islamiste, et donc oui, les préceptes de la charia, notamment dans nos écoles. Vous avez en face de vous, Madame de Malherbe, le ministre de l'Éducation nationale, l'ancien ministre de l'Éducation nationale, qui a pris une décision importante, interdire le port de l'abaya et du camis dans nos établissements scolaires. C'est pour ça que la semaine prochaine, comme je l'ai annoncé, le garde des Sceaux prendra une circulaire pénale pour que, quand vous êtes agressé parce que vous ne respectez pas des principes religieux, le plus systématiquement possible, c'est évidemment une impression du juge, on puisse retenir une circonstance aggravante, comme c'est le cas quand on adresse quelqu'un parce qu'il a une religion en particulier. Je souhaite qu'il y ait ce contrat, manière de réaffirmer très fortement et symboliquement les choses. Mais la symbolique, c'est pas suffisant. Donc ce contrat, il rentrera en vigeur à la rentrée prochaine, à la rentrée de septembre.
Donc ça, c'est sûr, il y aura un contrat à signer entre...
Et là...
L'élève aussi le signera?
2 minors aged 14 and 15 were indicted on Friday for murder as part of the investigation into the fatal attack on Philippe Koopman, a 22-year-old young man beaten to death on Tuesday in Gronde-Sinthe, announced the Dunkirk prosecutor. Prosecutor Charlotte, during a press conference, said at this stage of the investigation, there are reasons to believe this is a murder aggravated by the circumstance of ambush.
D'assassinat a été retenu par le parquet, c'est-à-dire le meurtre, aggravé par la circonstance de guet-apens. Cette qualification a été retenue dans la mesure où il existe des raisons de penser que les mis en cause ont attendu à plusieurs Philippe Koopman dans un lieu où ils lui avaient donné rendez-vous avant de le tuer. Les mis en cause ont été mis en examen de ce chef d'assassinat, c'est-à-dire qu'un juge d'instruction, magistrat indépendant, après examen du dossier et recueil des observations des mis en cause en présence de leurs avocats, a partagé.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken accuses China of fueling Russia's invasion of Ukraine through the transfer of dual-use materials and weapons components from Chinese businesses to Russia for use in Moscow's military expansion. Blinken spoke at a press conference after a meeting of G7 foreign ministers on the Italian island of Capri, where he had urged his European counterparts to increase pressure on Beijing.
With Europe, we're also working to strengthen efforts to disrupt the transfer of weapons and also inputs for Russia's defense industrial base. When it comes to weapons, what we've seen, of course, is North Korea and Iran primarily providing things to Russia. But when it comes to Russia's defense industrial base, the primary contributor in this moment to that is China. We see China sharing machine tools, semiconductors, other dual-use items that have helped Russia rebuild the defense industrial base that sanctions and export controls had done so much to degrade. Now, if China purports, on the one hand, to want good relations with Europe and other countries, it can't, on the other hand, be fueling what is the biggest threat to European security since the end of the Cold War.
Yulia Navalnaya, the widow of the late Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, is awarded the Freedom Prize of the Media during the Ludwig Ahern Summit in Bavaria, southern Germany. She promised to keep fighting for media freedom like her late husband Alexei did.
It's a great honor, but it's a great responsibility. Because you are presenting this award to me and to Alexei. 2 months ago, Putin killed him in prison. This means I have to keep up the work for both of us. I'll keep up fighting for media freedom like Alexei did, and I will also bring in something of my own. On the path to normal European future of Russia and on the path to peace and prosperity in Europe stands just one person, Vladimir Putin. He is holding on tightly, but it wouldn't last forever. This is why we will continue our work. We'll find new ways to bypass censorship and keep Russians updated with the truth. We will convince even more people to support the European path of Russia. Right now, the voices of millions of people are being silenced by repression and fear. But if things change just a bit, their voices will be heard loudly. We just need to keep fighting and not give up, and we will keep doing so. Your support, along with this award, gives us the strength to continue following the path my husband dedicated himself to.
Let's head to North America, where students and medical professors at the University of Buenos Aires have demonstrated against government cuts that have led to many public universities to work without light, with students taking classes outdoors. Authorities say if the budget is not updated in line with Argentine inflation, the University of Buenos Aires may have to close its borders before the start of the second semester. Argentina's president, Javier Milei, has expressed concerns on several occasions and also on social media posts that public universities indoctrinate students with leftist ideology. Public universities in Argentina have called for a national university march on March 23rd, which is expected to be massive.
Argentina es una tradición de más de 200 años. Tenemos una universidad, en esta en particular, que es la UBA, que está entre las primeras de Latinoamérica y es una de las 50 mejores del mundo, y en este momento está desfinanciada. No, de ninguna manera, no hay adoctrinamiento. Como en todas las universidades del mundo puede haber militancia política, pero de todos los partidos políticos, ninguno está vedado.
Es un riesgo porque la universidad pública forma profesionales de calidad al servicio de todo el pueblo y del mundo, y porque un país sin profesionales y sin científicos no puede progresar nunca.
Bueno, lo que es el decanato y la dirección de nuestra facultad particularmente declaró la emergencia presupuestaria, con lo cual se tomaron medidas para tratar de disminuir los gastos, sobre todo a raíz de una boleta de luz que llegó millonaria que se hizo impagable para lo que era el presupuesto con el que disponía la universidad. Tomaron la decisión de cortar la luz en las áreas comunes mientras sea de día y reducir el uso de los ascensores.
In Asia, Indians thronged polling stations in the cities of Nagaur and Haridwar on the first day of the country's marathon 6-week general election. Voting will be staggered over 7 stages between April 19th and June 1st, with more than 1 million polling stations across India. A total of 968 million people are eligible to take part in the world's biggest vote that critics say follows a concerted effort to delegitimize rivals. A long and widened queue was patiently assembled outside the polling station in the Hindu holy city of Haridwar on the banks of the Ganges River even before the booths opened.
आगे बढ़े रहे, देश में कोई कमी नहीं है। मोदी जी तो जो भी कर रहे हैं अच्छा कर रहे हैं, पर यहाँ के जो नीचे की जो सरकार है वो यहाँ के लिए अच्छा नहीं कर रहे हैं। ग्रामीण के लिए ना कोई विकास नहीं हुआ आज तक, कोई देश आगे नहीं बढ़ा, हम लोग का जला।
And the beat of sports stories to wrap it up. An organization of Olympic Sports Federation has said the decision by the World Athletics to award prize money to gold medalists in its event undermines the values of Olympism. The Association of Summer Olympic International Federations released a statement that made clear how unhappy it was at the announcement by the World Athletics President, Sebastian Coe, that track and field gold medalists at the Paris Games will receive $50,000. Last week, World Athletics President Sebastian Coe broke with tradition when it announced that starting this summer, gold medalists across the 48 events on the track and field program will split $2.4 million from the sports share of the International Olympic Committee's multi-billion-dollar income. And that's all on Beyond the Continent. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen and follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch us live on DSTV, channel 422, Star Times, channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Adebola Adedugba.